Hey, and welcome back. It's the Marketer of the Day podcast with fellow podcaster Skip Wilson from draftadvertising.com. Skip Wilson is a luminary, I tell you, a luminary in advertising, and he has been on this journey since age 16 as a copywriter, but he has evolved into a digital media pioneer. This means he shaped CNN's Special Projects iReport team. He spearheaded iHeartMedia's digital expansion. His expertise expands decades and spans decades as well. So Skip empowers you as a marketer worldwide, and his relentless pursuit of excellence continues to define advertising. He provides practical insights, transformative solutions for businesses navigating the digital age. So we're going to find out how Skip can tell us what we need to know about our digital marketing, about our advertising. That way, it doesn't have to be a guessing game. It can be a predictable science. We understand, we use, we benefit from it, we love it. So Skip, glad to be speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be on with you, man.
Yeah, likewise. It's always there's definitely like the value in the human connection, and it's easy to not value people, but every connection and every conversation matters. And I'm always just trying to dial in my inner Mr. Rogers and just be like, hey,
That's right.
have those insights, have the positivity. And so we hyped you up a little bit, but what are you all
That's right.
about? What's your current focus and passion?
Yeah, so I really have gotten into the as sort of the advertising world has changed so much, like over the past few decades. It really hasn't. I mean, to your point, actually, almost before we were even talking, it's changed so much in terms of the different tools and toolboxes, but it's still the same, getting a message to a specific audience. And so that, I would say, that's what gets me hyped, is just how like the old traditional fundamental like core truths, seeing those as like working out deontologically, like working those out in like an unchangeable way. That's the exciting thing. Seeing, because then you get to, then when every time you see a new tool that comes out, it's like, oh, I know what that is. That would help me with this piece that I already knew I needed because I knew the fundamentals beforehand. So
Yeah.
that's the exciting. That's what excites me.
Yeah, the blending of the old and the new, and having
Exactly.
your base fundamental foundation, so that way when the new bright shiny object comes along, you can sort of sort it into the correct box. You can say, well, is this some weird thing that isn't quite there yet, or it doesn't matter? Okay, put it in that box. Is this something that maybe enhances what I do? Can this add on to what I do? And what's the translation? And it's so easy to get lost in the keywords and the buzzwords, right? And you get,
Absolutely.
and we all fall for it, right? You get excited, and say Facebook says, hey, there's this new type of ad, and we're going to put all these words on it, and the newness is exciting, but will that actually translate to money, to growing your business, to getting those customers? Well, maybe not. And so you're saying
Exactly.
that all this idea of, you have this message, you have people that have the pain point, you get in front of them, you work on them, and then it's the technology that changes that, hopefully, ideally, makes it easier for both sides, right? Makes it where that customer can
Right.
get to you faster, and you can kind of get the data, and you can like run your ads and see what's profitable and expand. And so, I mean, tell me about what what your business is working on. Like, what kind of clients do you have? What sort of problems do you solve?
So for us, we work almost, 70% of our business is behind the scenes of other ad agencies. And what we focus in on is purely paid media, traditional media, new media. We started off as a software as a service. The original idea, originally we were Draft Advertising Technology, which now is still a division of our thing. But originally it was, a draft was an acronym that stood for Dynamic Response Advertising Forecast Technology, which is a mouthful, but basically it's just a fancy way of saying like, hey, if you have a roofing client in Des Moines and they need 100 more jobs a month, then this would say, okay, if they need 100 jobs, this is how many leads they need. This is their budget, so this is the right media mix for that budget to get this many leads. Because all of that stuff is very like objective. So we built this like software to do media planning. And the original idea was, let's sell that software to ad agencies. And then we didn't realize, it didn't dawn on us, wait, ad agencies have like a million software as a service. The last thing they need is like another SaaS. So after a number of, hey, thanks for building this plan, can you guys just do it for us? Then we pivoted. And so that's still where we are today. ad execution company, mostly behind the scenes of other media companies, other ad agencies, those things, especially creative ad agencies, because they do a great job of honing in the messaging. And then it's our team that really does the actual implementation of those things.
Wonderful. And I like your thought process here. What's forming, at least in my imagination, is like this blend of the art and the science, right? You say, well,
Yeah.
here's what our objective is, and based on we want this number of jobs, you need this number of leads. Based on that, you need these ads, you need these budget, and then like fill in the gaps. Then that's when you play with the ads and see how they convert and see how they are profitable. And so it's fun to think about the story that happens there, right? Of just like solving this problem, figuring out the math equation, and then kind of using the deep thinking in between there just to make it all work. And so where do people go wrong with paid advertising other than everywhere, right? Like they need someone like you because like there can be the best software in the world, but unless someone like puts in the work, just the thinking, runs the campaigns, run the tests, then it's, it can have the best tool in the world, but you need to use it properly. And so what sort of drives you crazy, or what are the maybe do's and don'ts these days with paid ads?
Yeah, the two extremes I see all the time. We will see a very well thought out plan with great creative, great messaging, all of those things, where usually they paid a lot of money on the front end to do a lot of research and those types of things. But then when they get to actually putting in the campaign into whatever platform it is, they run it in the wrong market because they didn't check the right boxes, or they didn't run pixels to actually track conversions. So one end of the spectrum is focusing only on one side of it, either focusing only on the messaging or focusing only on, the audience, and not focusing on realizing that it takes both. The other end of the spectrum is and this is more, so that's usually more of like a big company problem. Like big companies just put a lot of money into the wrong end of the spectrum. The other side, more happens with small businesses. With small businesses, they will run some sort of a test and then decide that the platform's what didn't work. So in other words, you will hear things all the time like, oh, Google Ads doesn't work for my business, or radio doesn't work for my business, or whatever it is. They will blame whatever medium or platform it is. And rarely is that the case. Usually the reason that platform exists, especially if it's one that is your competitors are using or that other businesses are using, it's not the platform that's the problem. It's some piece of that campaign. And I think of ad campaigns very much like, fixing an ad campaign is a lot like fixing an engine or anything else, right? It's like you try to figure out, okay, electricity is getting from here to here, but then it dies here and it doesn't get here. And so, that's the way you should be thinking about fixing an ad campaign. It's like, are you getting the right number of impressions to clicks or click-through rate? If your click-through rate is good, then your ad's fine. What's happening on your whatever you're sending them on your landing page or whatever? If you're getting clicks but they're not converting, well, then it's a landing page problem. So let's fix that. Or if you're getting leads and they're not converting, are they good leads or are they bad leads? If they're bad leads, meaning not your target audience, well, then you've got an audience issue. So you want to, there's too much of a temptation to go, this campaign didn't work, when rarely is that the case. Usually it's some piece of it didn't work. Just taking the time to dig in to figure out which piece it was and fix that. That's my biggest pet peeve. Is like someone will be like, oh, this campaign didn't work. Well, I already know, like, probably that's not the case. But,
The whole campaign didn't work, the whole platform didn't work. You might as well say landing pages don't work, podcasts don't work, webinars don't work. It's not they don't work. It's that maybe you need to debug the system a little bit and figure out those ways where it goes wrong. And it is easy to jump to those conclusions and be emotional and take it personal and feel like you're right. And we've all been there where we just looked at someone else's numbers, right? And it doesn't even matter like what it is, right? Accounting, ad campaign, whatever. You look at it, you say, hey, this is what really jumped out at me. Like this is my best guess. Like this could use some fixing up, like fix this on the ad copy, fix this on the landing page. And so that's a helpful insight, is just don't throw it all out. you might be 80% on the way there, but you need someone to go and figure out where it's going wrong. And so, I was really impressed when I read your little bit of your bio there a little bit, like you helped iHeartRadio become what it is and all that. So can you maybe tell us about that? Like, what are your humble brags? What are your successes?
So it's all been dumb luck, honestly. When I first started, so I was trying to impress a girl, and I told her that I was a writer, which was it wasn't really true when I said it. I was a writer, I guess, when nobody cared. But then that started working out. So that's how I started getting into advertising in general, is because the only writing jobs was as a copywriter. So that's how I started that. Then I was asked by one of the ad agencies I was freelancing for, "Hey, can you do web design?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Well, really? Because it's, this pays $5,000." And at that time, like, I'd never even heard of, like, the idea of making $5,000 on a project, like, blew my mind. Right. And WordPress was just becoming a thing. So I went to Barnes and Noble, which is, of course, the only place you could get books at the time, bought a thing on WordPress. And then, so that's how I got into web design in general. Then I got really into the idea of getting a message out there, wanted to be a journalist. And that's how I sort of ended up at CNN. Originally as an internship in college. And then it was always like, "Hey, you're young. We're working on this user generated content platform. So it was all being in the right place at the right time. And it was really the same thing with iHeart. I had worked with developing the stuff for Time Warner. I'd also worked as an account executive at a radio station. Those two things combined were like, "Hey, this guy knows radio. This guy knows digital. We're launching," at that time it was Clear Channel Radio. They were launching a new app that was going to be called iHeartRadio. And they're like, "Can you help us out with building out that team?" So it was all being in the right place at the right time. But with that said, that did give me a sort of, especially my time at iHeart, because it was, when you're developing a department like from the ground up, you have no processes in place. You don't even really have a product suite in place, right? We had one product, but you can't go to market with just one product, at least not in like the B2B service industry world, right? And so it gave me a nice sort of experience to be able to try out, okay, pricing strategies, where do we fit in the market, all of that stuff. There's a lot of conversations about starting your own business and those things. And of course, I'm very glad that I did, but I didn't, I was in the corporate world for 15-ish years before I did start my own thing. And I have to say, like, that was the right move. So in other words, if you are an employee somewhere, that's great. That you can be, do a great job there and learn what you can, because it will help later.
Yeah, I agree completely that the little amount of healthy stress and stretching yourself and getting outside your comfort zone helps to develop that muscle. And then we all notice after the fact, but almost never during, how when you're going through different steps in your career, you're like picking up these skills that you then take with you in other areas. Like you pick up your copywriting, you pick up your paid ads and your digital marketing. And then, as we said before, like the trends and the fads come and go, but then those fundamentals still remain there. So like that, some of the stuff that you learned 10, 15 years ago at CNN, etc., you end up still using it even today. And it's like, I love the story that you told of kind of like pursuing each opportunity and kind of being at the kind of hanging off a cliff there and being like, well, it's a little bit of a risk. It's a little bit of something new I'm not doing, but if you want the same old stuff, keep doing the same old stuff. If you want some new exciting adventure, then kind of find the courage and kind of go to the whatever the next step is for you. And so, and all these cool skills that you've picked up and all these lessons you've learned, what's really interesting is like you figured out some of these math equations, which you have behind you on your wall. It's the first thing that I noticed when we first met. And so we don't have to go through all of them, but is there one particular math formula behind you that you think really needs attention today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for general business operation, the top one, which is impossible to read, so I apologize, but Marcus Lemonis has this people, product, process thing that he talks about a lot. What I did was basically just turn that into a math equation, which is, in parentheses, people plus product plus process, and then times distribution. Because I would take your business and think through, all right, how are my people? In other words, are they resourced? Do they know what they're doing? All of that on a scale of 1 to 10. What's my product stack like? Is it connecting with the marketplace on a scale of 1 to 10? How are my processes? Are things getting turned around in a timely manner? Scale of 1 to 10. And then how well are you getting that message out there? That's the sort of multiplier, because you can have the best business in the world, but if you are located behind some other store and no one has a way of finding you online, then you're going to go out of business, right? Because what's your distribution like? If you're selling amazing ice cream cones and you're in the middle of Times Square, you're going to do fine. If you're selling amazing ice cream cones and you're doing it from the trunk of a car in the middle of nowhere, you're going to go out of business. So that, I would say, is that equation for business owners is the main one to focus on. Because if you're not maximizing your people, which for us, we at the beginning of each quarter we spend a week on each one of those. What are we doing on the people side? What are we doing on the product side? And I would actually recommend that, because we're constantly, right now, our weak spot is process, where we have processes, but we've staffed up since we came up with those processes. So we need to now update our processes. And so it's a constantly changing thing. But yeah, from an advertising standpoint, the main one is the conversion equation is essentially urgency, desire, trust divided by delay, cost, and effort. The more you can increase urgency, desire, or trust and decrease delay, cost, and effort, that's what people are looking for. If you're doing like a lead gen campaign or something like that, you're not getting people's email addresses. Keep in mind, an email address, my contact information has a personal value to me of about $50, which means that you've got to give me something that I deem is worth $50 in order for me to give you that. So that's something, a lot of times when we do like lead gen campaigns that aren't working, it's like, are you giving away something that has at least a perceived value of $50 or not? So they're all helpful, but those are the two I would go through first.
Those are helpful, and you're a fellow podcaster, so you know that part right there made for an amazing soundbite, right?
That's
Just
right.
dishing out some kind of an equation like that, and it's helpful because it's easy to overcomplicate things when you say, well, there's all these factors at play, right? There's like my people, process, product. Oh, well, do I keep switching gears, or do I do some of each? But then if you like do this kind of recurring revisiting of what you're doing, and you say, well, hey, where's the weak spot? Where could we be better? And like the whole like selling the ice cream cones in the middle of nowhere, it's like you said, you can have the best ice cream cones in the whole world. You could have really good advertising, but if it's just the wrong location, you have one little piece out of whack, then you need to fix that small problem to then kind of repair the rest of the system. And I find that really kind of like an awkward and uncomfortable but necessary idea to keep on recurringly revisit some of the stuff with your team, right? Every month, every quarter. And I'm always working on this. I'm like, well, are our SOPs out of date? Or like,
right.
Here's what the SOP says versus here's like what the actions are that they've evolved into. So now we have to like kind of update the SOPs to match the actions that it's like kind of a recurring cycle, right? And so it
Exactly.
drives you crazy if you let your imagination run too wild with it. But by you like reducing it to these equations, it kind of gives us something doable and kind of communicates everyone that way. That way we can all kind of be on the same page, on the same team about solving this problem. And so as we said, you're a podcaster, and so you know this firsthand that when you have a guest on, it's the most fun when they talk about their catastrophic failures, right? Because you could have Marcus Lemonis on and say, hey, I have this TV show and I have all these successes. But to hear Marcus Lemonis say like, hey, this is where I really struggled, I was really afraid, that's the good stuff, right? That's what we want. And so what comes to mind for you, Mr. Skip Wilson, as far as in your journey, has there been a moment of stress, panic, where you really had to become better and learn something to get yourself out of it?
So I think that one thing that I wasn't prepared for is that in the business owner world, that happens like daily. I think at least once a day, I reach a moment of like stress and panic and fear. But I'll give sort of two. I mean, one I've already sort of alluded to. We had to pivot our whole structure as a company. I mean, we were a SaaS that for an industry that was the last thing they wanted. And pivoting from a SaaS to a service, internally, that changed the whole value proposition. It's like, well, now we got to worry about scaling in a different way. It's a different it's a whole different type of, not even product, but it's a whole different type of company, right? Like the way we're structured, we need to change all of that. So we had to essentially fold draft ad technology into this whole different entity. So being willing to hold and respond to market demands, I think is key. If you are getting a lot of good at bats and they're consistently not turning into something, but the feedback you're getting is the same every time, which was the case with us. We kept getting yeah, I don't really want that, but I really want you guys to do this. When that happens 5 or 6 or 7 times, it's like, okay, clearly that's where the opportunity is. So let's stop doing this. And so, I mean, for us, if we had dug in where we were at for our first 8 months or so and said, no, we're sticking to this business no matter what, we would be out of business today instead of struggling with scaling issues, which is our current problem. Still a problem, but a much better problem to have is keeping up with demand. Sort of a little bit harder problem to solve, but whatever. The other thing that the other sort of failure I would mention is I had thought that because I was in the corporate world and over a division that was fairly autonomous, my boss was many states away from me. So in my mind, and so I didn't have direct daily oversight or anything. So in my mind, it's like, okay, well, leading a division within a company like that, there's not going to be much difference between that and owning my own business. I'm already judged against profit and loss. I'm already having to build my own processes. It's like, there will be no difference. But then I was setting up this printer. I have 2 weeks out on my own. And this was three plus years ago, almost 4 years ago now. But I was setting up this printer and it just couldn't get it to work with my computer and just had like a breakdown. That was my first realization of there's no IT department. There's no one else to call. You're purely on your own. That sort of, that carries with it a certain I don't know, responsibility that I wasn't expecting. So those are my 2 big failures. We had to pivot the whole company, and then the personal toll of just realizing that, oh wait, no, it is different when it's all up to you.
Yeah, and that might have been the most entrepreneurial thing I've ever heard a moment ago when you said something like, well, you had these little problems and then people kept telling you to do this differently, and then you just traded the little problems for bigger problems. And that's what we want, right? We don't want to avoid problems, and problems, they are things to figure out, but with that comes more chaos, but also comes more growth and more money and just like a bigger freight train. And I think a lot about those kind of important life decisions. And there's definitely been times when I was afraid to do something. And like the perfect stereotype is like giving up the 9 to 5 for being a business owner. And so many times you think, is it really that bad? Is it really that irreversible? But even more importantly, you think, well, I already do it, right? And the change that I'm saying, oh, I don't know if I can make it, if I can do it. It's like you've already made the change. It's just maybe more or less formality, and like you're already kind of traded the past for the future already. So that's amazing and inspiring for us to think about. And so we also want to get some attention onto draftadvertising.com. So you talked to us, you amazed us with your stories, with your lessons, with your math equation, but now it's time to pay some bills, right? Now it's time to get some of that sweet PR call to action in copywriting terms. And so what is Draft Media Partners all about? How does someone know if they're a good fit? And if they are, where do they go? What do they do?
So if you are someone who needs to get a specific message to a specific audience and then track results, then you're a good fit, because that's what we do. So we only do those things. If you're somebody who needs like a brand story and logos and those types of things, we have some great partners that we could refer you to, but that's not our space. Is more like, no, you need X number of leads, or it's an anti-smoking campaign and you need X number of signups or something like that. So that's our focus. We don't charge for building plans, putting together proposals. That's our whole value proposition to the fractional CMOs and other marketers and agencies that we work with is, we build the plans, We execute the plans, and sometimes it's a white label basis, and sometimes it's not. That's if you're a business owner, you don't care if it's white label or not. If you're an agency or something, we can do it with your margins and stuff baked into it. But that's it. If you are somebody who needs a specific message to a specific people, then come to us. We're solution agnostic, so we have traditional media as well as new media. But our secret sauce is in our planning and tracking tools, because that's where the ad tech piece is. Didn't work as its own business, but when baked into services, it works well.
So now people get the benefit of it without having to figure out how to use the software.
Exactly.
That part is done for you. Get that specific message to that specific audience. If you want X number of leads, want to do it with paid advertising, then have that chat with Mr. Skip Wilson from Draft Media Partners, draftadvertising.com. And it's always a baller move to drop a phone number on a podcast, which is 864-312-7886. One more time, 864-312-7886. draftadvertising.com, Mr. Skip Wilson. And before I let you go, Mr. Skip, it's time to put you on the spot real quick. Yeah. I like to end a podcast with something fun and memorable. And I usually ask my guests for a fun quote or lesson that has helped them, that can help us. So what comes to mind for you as far as a fun podcast episode ending quote or lesson?
The biggest lesson would be have radical empathy. Listen to your customers, listen to your employees. That jerk that's yelling at you about something that's going on wrong with your product, that person's more valuable than anyone else in your life, because they're giving you their honest take and feedback from having dealt with you. So love those people who are shouting mean things at you, because that's the best kind of feedback and advice you can get.
I love it. And you might not like their approach or their delivery, right, but the message behind that is telling you exactly what you need to do more of, do less of, pivot to, etc. And so let's keep that in mind as we go to draftadvertising.com and see what's there, and see if Skip Wilson and his team can help us get those precious leads that we want so much. So thank you very much, Skip, for stopping by and just being a cool person and helping us out.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.